Hello and welcome to the third day of the 2020 IoTSF Annual Conference. This is the final day of the theme talks, but not the final day of the proceedings, as we have a training day tomorrow, of course. The IoTSF Annual Conference is the longest running dedicated conference on IoT security anywhere in the world, and we're delighted that you're here with us today. In these uncertain times, however, I just want to begin by saying that wherever you are, I hope that you and your loved ones are safe and well. I join you once again from my home, and wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you for joining us as we work together to make it safe to connect in this era of IoT. I'm John Moor, of course, co-founder and managing director of IoTSF. And as a final reminder, if you're tweeting, please use the conference hashtag IoTSF 2020 and make sure you tag us if you do at IoT_SF. Today's conference theme is resilience. Now, resilience is perhaps the most important element of security, but works best if it follows on from security by design and fitness of purpose, as we discussed in the preceding 2 days of this conference. In my formative career as an embedded systems engineer, admittedly it was a long time ago now, we didn't have to think too hard about security. In fact, the biggest risk at that time was physical access. And this was only likely to be of limited interest to hackers because the return on their effort would tend towards zero in most cases. Indeed, for the business I worked at the time, the biggest concern we had was really about counterfeiting of our products, not the misuse of them in operation. Today, of course, is a completely different story. We now live in a world of software-defined products and hyperconnectivity. The threat landscape is significantly different. Software is hackable and connectivity gives remote access. The attack surface is therefore massive, and we need to monitor and make sure that those things run as intended throughout their operating life. The implications of this, however, are quite profound. And I believe that much of industry has not quite yet realised the full implications of this new paradigm, that of software and connectivity. In our work, we can see that companies who have traditionally developed, manufactured and sell products will likely need to reimagine their entire design activity in the future. And a good example was illustrated back in 2017 at our conference when Gareth Long, CTO of Smarter, was very brave and honest about their plight and how they recovered from an apparent position of villain to hero, certainly in our eyes. We also see this replicated in other areas too. One such area is automotive, where massive changes are sweeping across the industry, including electrification, connectivity and autonomy. This renders the traditional V model of design somewhat limited, and my colleagues at our sister organisation, ASIN, are exploring those issues along with automotive cybersecurity. And it's not just the design cycle that's been impacted. It's my view that businesses will see less and less value from selling physical products in the future. Instead, they will see that managed services delivered at the right price point and with greater benefits and ownership will become much more prevalent than today. Now that's a massive shift for society to make. It's not entirely new and we're already underway, of course. However, it is not yet mainstream either. So aside from the profound implications of IoT and the changing paradigm that is evolving, the work of the past 5 years has been an education for me in many ways. As we've considered elements of building trust, for example, trust marks and product certifications, and we've all been critically re-evaluating their utility in a new context. Those two subjects alone cannot be unpacked in a short talk such as this, but suffice to say, when it comes to the dynamic nature of security, what we really need is continuous assurance. That is, trust is but a moment in time. Trustworthiness, however, is more valuable and enduring. Therefore, the subject of vulnerability management is incredibly important for us all to consider. Keeping our systems maintained to a level of, let's say, good enough security whilst in operation. In that regard, I'd like to draw your attention to a few of the things we've been doing at IoTSF to support the theme of resilience, and in particular vulnerability management. One of the earliest publications that we made was the Vulnerability Disclosure Best Practice Guide. We published that back in December 2017. It's an introductory text built on the prevailing standards. Those standards have been subsequently reviewed, yet whilst the previous versions were free to download, sadly the new versions need to be purchased. We feel that this is a massive mistake, and we continue to urge ISO, privately and now publicly, to reverting to make them free for the benefit of society. And in the meantime, we are reviewing the BPG, and it's likely we may publish a revised version in due course. We've also been monitoring the state of vulnerability disclosure practice in the consumer sector. The consumer sector because this has low barriers to entry, and in 2018 we published our first original research report. The headlines didn't impress us at all. Less than 10% of our study cohort had a readily identifiable vulnerability disclosure policy. Our aim for the report was not a one-time affair, but to monitor the situation. And so we followed up 1 year later with a report. Unfortunately, again, the situation had not improved much at all, and the dial only moved up to just about 13%. And that's very poor, considering we would like to see that number closer to 100%. And today, we announced the publication of the third report to take us into 2021. We've expanded the view slightly whilst maintaining consistency of results, and we've added a test to judge whether the companies who do have a policy would be compliant with the proposed UK legislation. As ever, the results make interesting, perhaps alarming reading, and I'm sorry to keep you in suspense here as to those findings. However, I will recommend you attend the talk Shining the Light of Truth later today with David Rogers and Rohan Panasar. They will dive deeper into the latest research. And finally, for today that is, I'd like to make you all aware of an exciting project we've been working on with our members, most notably Oxford Information Labs. I'd like to introduce you to vulnerablethings.com, a software as a service platform designed to make the reporting of vulnerabilities easier for researchers and simpler to manage for vendors. In doing so, our goal is not only to help improve IoT security overall, but also build better relationships between vendor and researcher. Whilst the service will remain free for reporters long term, to support its development and operation, we aim to make it a low fee service for industry, and we are currently trialling it with a free period up until the end of January. We're doing this to test demand and gain user feedback. Thereafter, there's no obligation to continue to use it, so if you're a vendor and not quite on top of your vulnerability disclosure policy and procedures, we urge you to take a look at Vulnerable Things and give it a try. The team here have worked very hard on making the user interface as simple and as uncomplicated as possible, and there's absolutely no assumption of prior knowledge with vulnerability disclosure to begin using it. So I'd like to thank those who have contributed to developing and testing the platform over the summer. It's been quite an intense process, and we trust it will be a valuable and useful service to help industry manage vulnerabilities. Oh, one more thing. Although we had the consumer space in mind when we put this together, the nature of vulnerability disclosure means it is applicable across many IoT sectors. So please give it a try on us. And now on to today's agenda. Yet just before we get into today's proceedings, let me once again take a short pause to thank the conference sponsors. We truly value your support. Thank you. So let's begin the day's session. Our keynote speaker this morning leads Microsoft's work on digital peace, diplomacy, and online stability. For those of you who are familiar with the book Tools and Weapons, The Promise and Peril of the Digital Age by the President of Microsoft and their Director of Communications, there is a chapter in it titled Digital Diplomacy. This is the backstory to Kaya's work, and today she represents the Cybersecurity Tech Accord. I'm therefore delighted to welcome Kaya to take the platform, and give us her insights and observations as to how we can collaborate to protect customers and users. So Kaya, the platform is yours.